Welcome to the May 10th, 2021 Troy City Council meeting. I will call this meeting to order and call on City Clerk Dixon for the roll call, please.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up, we have a resolution. I'll move that's resolved that Troy City Council hereby, wrong resolution. Resolution to amend the City Council Rules of Procedure. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby adopts the Troy City Council Rules of Procedure as amended, a copy of which shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the resolution to amend the City Council Rules of Procedure as just read. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries, and when we get to the public comment portion of the agenda, I'll have a new statement to read into the record for everybody. Next on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have 3 of them this evening. First up is C1, a proclamation for Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is May 2021, and I will go ahead and read that into the record. Whereas the city of Troy is one of the most diverse communities in the state of Michigan, with over 80 languages spoken in homes across its neighborhoods and businesses, and over 27% of its residents of Asian descent. And whereas the vast diversity of languages, religions, and cultural traditions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders continues to strengthen the fabric of American society and within our Troy community. And whereas from the arrival of the first Asian and Pacific Islander immigrants more than 150 years ago to those who arrive today, as well as those native to the Hawaiian Islands and to our Pacific Island territories, all possess the common purpose of fulfilling the American dream and leading a life bound by the American ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas during Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we remember the challenges and celebrate the achievements that define our history. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have endured and overcome hardships and heartaches. And whereas amidst these struggles, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have contributed in great and significant ways to all aspects of society. They have created works of literature, music, and art, thrived as American athletes, and prospered in the world of academia. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have played a vital role in our nation's economic and technological growth by establishing successful enterprises and pushing the limits of science. And whereas they are serving in positions of leadership within the government more now than ever before, and along with all of our great servicemen and women, they have defended and served the United States with valor from threats at home and abroad. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And be it further resolved that we invite all Troy residents to recognize and celebrate the vital role Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have played in our nation's history, as well as their outstanding achievements today and into the future. This proclamation is presented this 10th day of May 2021. And next up on the agenda is C2, which is a proclamation to Do Something Good for Your Neighbor Day, May 16th, 2021, and I will read that into the record as well. Whereas Do Something Good for Your Neighbor Day was established in 2010 as a way to bring individuals together to spread love and kindness to all neighborhoods. And whereas founder Star Valentino created this global-wide effort to unite humanity and has worked tirelessly to spread a message of performing acts of kindness across the United States. And whereas during the past year, our country has faced difficult times and daunting challenges from a world pandemic to economic turmoil. The vision for Do Something Good for Your Neighbor Day is to bring everyone closer together, even while socially distancing. And whereas our community has always come together spreading love and acts of kindness, and this was especially true since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020, our Troy School District put out the call for their Bridge the Gap program to ensure that no person in Troy went hungry due to loss of jobs and income related to the pandemic. And whereas we saw so many residents and businesses donating paper products and food, which was distributed weekly, serving tens of thousands of daily meals for more than a year now. People volunteered their time and talents to help in any way possible to lend a hand to their Troy neighbors. And whereas this past fall, a total of 145 volunteers from Troy and Athens high schools Project Lead Student Council and National Honor Society, St. Anastasia Catholic Church, Troy Rotary Club, Total Package Hockey Center, MYVA Group, and 5 Troy families raked 50 yards for seniors without the means to perform this work. And whereas from elementary and middle school students coming up with creative ways to help their neighbors, to high school students holding their annual Spirit Week to raise money for worthy nonprofit organizations, to a talented young musician playing music from a pedal boat in one of Troy's small lakes to make people smile, to residents sewing masks and caps and restaurants bringing food to our healthcare heroes, our entire community continues to do something good for our neighbors each and every day. And whereas it is a blessing to have a good neighbor, but it is an even greater blessing to be a good neighbor. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and the city council of the city of Troy hereby proclaim May 16th, 2021 as Do Something Good for Your Neighbor Day in the city of Troy. And be it further resolved that we invite all Troy residents to do something good for their neighbor and take a moment out of this day to bring people together through a show of love and care throughout our community. This is presented this 10th day of May 2021. And finally, we have C3, which is a proclamation to recognize National Police Memorial Week as May 9th through the 15th, 2021. And I'll read this into the record as well. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed a proclamation which designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which that date falls is National Police Memorial Week. Currently, tens of thousands of law enforcement officers from around the world converge on Washington, D.C. to participate in a number of planned events which honor those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas our law enforcement officers are the guardians of life and property, defenders of the individual right to be free, warriors in the battle against crime, and are dedicated to the preservation of life and property. And whereas the city of Troy honors the valor, service, and dedication of all police officers, and publicly salutes the service of each and every one of our own Troy police officers. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy hereby proclaims May 9th through the 15th, 2021 as Police Week in the city of Troy, and call upon all our citizens to make every effort to express appreciation to these men and women who are willing to sacrifice their lives, if necessary, to guard us and our loved ones against all who would violate the law. And be it further resolved that we invite all citizens to reflect and remember 4 Troy police officers, Charles Smetana, Martin Chivas, Charles Mulvihill, and William McCabe, who lost their lives in service to our community. These men will forever be remembered for their ultimate sacrifice. This is presented this 10th day of May 2021. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. There are no carryover items, so we move to public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight. It's the adoption of the 2021-2022 annual and 3-year city budget. And I will turn it over to City Manager Mark Miller to begin the presentation. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of council. I just want to make a very short statement. I want to thank Rob Melzek, our Chief Financial Officer, and his staff for preparing this budget, but it's much more than that. It is Beth and Stephanie in our office assembling it, and Stephanie making it look good, and every department head staff that contributes to this. So it is the biggest thing that our staff put together and work collaboratively. And I just want to thank all of them. And there's no way that I could do it all by myself, and there's no way Rob could do it all by himself. And I just wanted to say thank you to the staff.
Thank you, City Manager Miller. Appreciate that. And my understanding that presentation will be CFO Rob Malzek. So I'll turn it over to Rob now.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Presented to you tonight is the 21-22 annual and 3-year budget resolution for your approval. As we have previously discussed on April 19th and the 2 previous budget workshops that we had in November of 2020, this budget utilizes a responsible amount of general fund balance. It has a commitment to capital needs, and it also has improved commitment to the City of Troy Library thanks to the passing of the library millage. This budget keeps the millage rate relatively flat as the increase in the library millage is offset by the debt millage being retired. We continue to navigate conservatively as there remains many unknowns on our future revenues due to the pandemic. Thank you for your detailed dialogue, your numerous questions, and your commitment to this great city. With that, we'd be happy to answer anything additional before moving of the resolution.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate another budget season where we've done it primarily virtually with you, and you've come to Troy at such an interesting time. We appreciate all the, like Mark said, and all the hard work you've done to give us thorough responses to the questions we've already had over the past year, especially. And we know that you're ready for us again tonight. So with that said, is there any questions from council? I know there's been some that have been submitted earlier in writing, and we've had a study session and gone through a lot of questions and answers and discussion, but is there anything further as of right now? All right, that's very good. I don't have any further questions myself. Just as a reminder to the public who may be watching, we have asked and had answered a lot of questions so far. So this is not something we are taking lightly. It's something we've reviewed diligently and began discussions several months ago. So I will open the public hearing officially, and I don't have a gavel to knock, so I'm trying to open it. It's not working very well. City Clerk Dixon, is there any public comment specifically related to the public hearing that you're aware of this evening?
Yes, Mayor, we do have one email, and there is one member of the public logged in as an attendee. So I just wanted to remind that person that if they would like to make a public comment, to please click raise hand, and then you'll be called on. But I'll read the email first. This is from Jeff Wolishen. The $10,000 budget for new sidewalks is woefully inadequate for a city the size of Troy and does not address the needs of the residents in northern Troy who have requested sidewalks from Kurt Bovenseep and were promised sidewalks when work was to be done on South Boulevard. Please reallocate funds from streets, parks, Troy Museum, etc. The work on the road was done, but no sidewalks were installed. Later, he claimed he had no right-of-way. There are Troy fire hydrants along the road, which I believe constitutes a legal easement. He claimed wetlands as an issue, but Rochester Hills has the same wetland on the other side of the road, and they built sidewalks. How come Rochester Hills knows how to provide sidewalks, bike paths, and Troy does not? Not heard of eminent domain. Thousands of residents in Forest Park and High Oaks and other subdivisions are not able to walk, bicycle the half mile to the corner of South Boulevard and Crooks to several restaurants, drugstores, shops, and Kroger. There are also other sections of sidewalks, bike paths along Coolidge, among others, with missing sections. Again, why? Mr. Bovenseep should ask Rochester Hills how they do it. Quit trying to put bike trails through residential neighborhoods where they are unwanted. Focus on sidewalks around the major north, south, east, west mile roads. Use asphalt like Rochester Hills, smoother, no uneven sidewalk sections. You don't need concrete for pedestrians. And the resident logged in has not raised their hand. So that's all the budget comment we have.
Okay, very good. Anybody from city administration or city council like to address the public comment we just heard regarding sidewalks? City Manager Miller.
I know Kurt Bovenseep is on this call, and we did not discuss this before the meeting, and I would like the opportunity for Kurt to respond if he so desires. And
Hi, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I am aware of the situation on South Boulevard. The commitment was made when there was road improvements that expanded South Boulevard that would include a sidewalk, much like what we did on John R. Road. This is something that we would include in our overall master plan for trails and pathways. That area is something we would look at. We would look at all gaps on major roads if that plan indicated to do so. So this is something that we will consider going forward with the Trails and Pathways program. I wouldn't look at this as necessarily as a sidewalk gap program, which is correct, is budgeted at $10,000.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other further comment regarding that? All right. Nobody new on Zoom, correct? All right. Well, we will close the public hearing then, and someone would like to make a resolution. Councilmember Hamilton.
I'll move E1, adoption of the 2021-22 annual and 3-year city budget as printed in the agenda packet.
Support. Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve E1, adoption of the 2021-22 annual and 3-year city budget as printed in the agenda packet and not read into the record as I threatened to do earlier. So, any discussion? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I again want to reiterate to thank Mark Miller and CFO Melzik and all of city staff for this entire budget process. This was a process for city council's involvement was 6 months in the making. This was the first year that in November we had extra budget sessions to really begin the process early and to let our ideas propagate and really be able to be incorporated into this budget. And that's why we haven't really done many modifications this late, because we got started really early. And I think that process was very healthy and really made this budget process really easy at this part. And that's why there's minimal questions right now. I've, of course, had my usual pages and pages of questions in the last few weeks, which were all answered. And so I'm happy to support this budget. Looking forward to finally having a 7-day library to address capital needs and fix our roads, which you already see happening. And there's so many good things in this budget that's coming in the next year.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Additional discussion? We've discussed this budget a lot over the past couple of meetings. Just a quick echo of what Councilmember Hamilton said, and we do appreciate what this city's administration and staff has given, the opportunities they've given us to participate in this process. And so, Mark, I commend you for that, and you thanked your team at the beginning, and that thanks should filter on from us as well, because we appreciate all that you've done. And I go back. I made this comment a few meetings ago, but I'm going to say it again because it still strikes me as interesting. I had considered this budget a very solid but relatively consistent budget and stable budget. And Councilmember Hamilton had mentioned how he felt it was really progressive and forward thinking. And I think the fact that we both feel that way, it means it's somewhere right in the middle and good. Good for the city. So I think that's a good place to be, recognizing, of course, that we will and are free to and will likely make budget amendments as we move through the fiscal year, because there will be changes. There obviously will be funding that comes available from the American Rescue Plan. So that'll play a role, and that's not addressed in this budget. But we have a good, solid budget for this coming up fiscal year, and the 3-year projection as well. So again, appreciate city staff and everybody on council. I think we all at times put in really good input and asked good questions. So I think that makes for a good process and a good budget overall. So that said, I will ask Ms. Dixon, moved on my screen, for the vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes, motion carries. City Manager Miller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just would like to reiterate what the Mayor just said, that with the American Rescue Plan Act, we anticipate a mini budget program coming through. And Rob, we did get some confirmation about that funding today. It was it 8.4 million, I believe?
Yeah, 8.181.
So once we start getting the more exact rules, we'll develop some special meetings to amend our budgets when we know our revenues and how we can spend the money more specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Miller and CFO Malzik. Appreciate that, and we look forward to those and to that process. Okay, so that concludes public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment. We just passed new rules that now require me to read this statement. So I have a statement that I have to read in regarding public comment. So members of the public who wish to address an electronic meeting of the City Council are permitted to do so in one of 3 ways. Number 1, public comments may be submitted via email to publiccomment@troymi.gov. Emails received before 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting will be read aloud during the meeting. Email comments are limited to 3 minutes. Number 2, public comments may be submitted via voicemail by calling 248-524-3302. Voicemails received before 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting will be played during the meeting. Voicemail comments are limited to 3 minutes. And number 3, this is the new part, members of the public may attend the electronic meeting remotely and participate in a public comment period by following the instructions on the city's website. Those who wish to participate in a public comment period are asked to provide their name so they may be recognized by the city clerk. If participating via video conferencing, click raise hand to be recognized or press *9 if participating via telephone. After you are recognized by the city clerk, click unmute or press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. Each member of the public will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please direct your comments to the City Council as a whole rather than to any individual. Please do not use expletives or make derogatory or disparaging comments about any individual or group. If you do, there may be immediate consequences, including being muted and having your comments omitted from any rebroadcast of the meeting. Please abide by these rules in order to minimize the possibility of disrupting the meeting. That said, we are now in the public comment portion. As City Clerk Dixon had mentioned, if you are attending remotely, which there is somebody that has joined on, if you'd like to speak during this public comment, please raise your hand. Right, City Clerk Dixon?
That's correct. The resident has not raised their hand. I do have a voicemail to play as well, so I'm going to go ahead and start that.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is Bart calling. My address is 1094 Robertson Drive, Troy, Michigan, 48085. My phone number is 248-689-9341. Cell number is 248-229-6519. I had left 2 messages to request the committee to get our shrubs trimmed by the owner of the property which is behind our house. They are building all these condos and they are not doing the right job. Their shrubs are, some is tall, some is haphazardly grown. They look all ugly and my backyard looks very ugly because of that. And I think a couple months ago when you had a meeting, I found out that you are going to contact the owner to get those shrubs trimmed so that it gives a better look to our backyard. And I don't know whether it was done or not, but I will appreciate if you can let me know how soon you will contact him because summer is coming and I want to make sure that it is done. I'm highly thankful to your help. Thank you very much and have a good day. Bharti Bhatt.
That's all the public comment tonight.
That concludes those that have participated in public comment this evening as an opportunity for city management or city council to address the public comment. City Manager Miller, I know you'd spoken out before. Can you go ahead and address this one?
Yeah, I believe this is a case that we're familiar with, but I'll have to double check. If it is the same case, the trimming of those shrubs would be the responsibility and within the realm of the private property owner, and there is no violation. But we'll double check and get back to council with a Q&A on that to be 100% certain.
Okay. I may be misremembering, but I thought we were going to maybe speak, if it is the same case, to the developer to see if they'd be willing to do the neighborly thing, maybe on May 16th, do something good for your neighbor day, and at least reach out to the homeowners. And I don't know, your notes will tell you. So I appreciate that. If you could just let us know so we can get back with this resident. Appreciate it. Any additional comment from council in response to public comment? All right. There are no postponed items this evening, so we'll move on to regular business. First, our mayoral appointments under board and committee appointments. I have one this evening. To the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, it's resolved that the mayor hereby appoints Joseph Byer for the term expiring April 30th, 2024.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that the mayor appoints Joseph Byer to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the term expiring April 30th, 2024. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries, and thank you to Mr. Byer for agreeing to serve on that, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And that concludes mayoral appointments this evening. Next are city council appointments. We have several, which were nominated at the last meeting. So I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, there's a couple. So I would first like to appoint Sandy Friesen to the Building Code Board of Appeals for the term expiring January 1st, 2025.
Support.
Who was that supporting? Sorry. It was either Ann or Ellen. It was Ann? Okay. All right. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt. The City Council appoints Sandy Friesen to the Building Code Board of Appeals for the term expiring January 1st, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Friesen.
Okay, and then I would move to appoint Mark Bartnick, Toby Beekner, and Susan Matthews to the Charter Revision Committee for the term expiring for April 30th of 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that City Council appoints Mark Bartnick, Toby Beekner, and Susan Matthews to the Charter Revision Committee for the terms expiring April 30th, 2024. Any discussion? Maybe it's time to convene that committee. It's been a while. So the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Motion carries. And we thank the three of them for their service to our community as well. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Okay, thank you. I move to appoint Govind Dragon, the Thai, sorry if I mispronounced it, to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2022.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Chamberlain Krianga, City Council appoints Govindrajan Batai to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2022. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna move to appoint Jeffrey Forster, Pamela Gordon, and Jane Parpart to the Personnel Board for the term expiring April 30th of 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, the City Council appoints Jeffrey Forster, Pamela Gordon, and Jane Parpart to the Personnel Board for the term expiring April 30th, 2024. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion carries. Last one. Go ahead.
Okay, yep, last one. I move to appoint Abhi Masundari, Swaminathan, and Cynthia Wilshire to the Traffic Committee for the term expiring January 31st of 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that City Council appoints Abira Masundari Swaminathan and Cynthia Wilshire to the Traffic Committee for the terms expiring January 31st, 2024. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank all of those residents for agreeing to serve on those important boards. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, for getting them all to do it. That concludes City Council appointments this evening. Next up is I2 Board and Committee nominations. No mayoral nominations this evening, so I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks for City Council nominations.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. A couple of nominations. I move to renominate John Howard Adams, Hirak Chanda, and Timothy McGee to the Historic District Commission for the term expiring May 15, 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that City Council nominates John Howard Adams, Hirak Chanda, and Timothy McGee to the Historic District Commission for the term expiring May 15th, 2024. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries. Do you have additional nominations?
Okay, yes, finally, this is the last. I would like to nominate to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I would like to renominate Thomas Desmond and nominate Hendrik Hankry to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the term expiring April 30th of 2024. Do I do the alternates separately or do I do them all at the same time?
I believe
You can do them all.
Okay.
Okay, and then for the alternate positions, I nominate Jeffrey Forrester and Barbara Chambers as alternates for the term expiring January 31st, 2024 to the Zoning Board of Appeals as well.
Support.
I think those are 1-year terms for the alternates. Is that correct? Or are they?
It's
forget.
in the it's listed as January 31st, 2024 in the agenda packet. So
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yep. For some reason, I thought those were 1 years. Okay. Sorry.
that's okay.
Now I lost track. I believe it's nominated by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt. The City Council nominates Thomas Desmond and Hendrik Hankry to the terms expiring April 30th, 2024, and Jeffrey Forrester and Barbara Chambers as alternates for the terms expiring January 31st, 2024 to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes City Council nominations this evening. Next up is I3. There's no closed session. Were you raising your hand, Mark? No, saw your pen, sorry. No closed session requested this evening, so we'll move on to I4, Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County Purchasing Cooperative, replacement of electrical service line and panel located at the Sylvan Glen Golf Course. That'll be introduced by Brian Gould, our Recreation Director, who I see has joined us. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you is to replace an electrical service line and panel at the Sylvan Glen Golf Course using Shaw Service and Maintenance through the Oakland County Cooperative Contract number 005446. This project also requires a budget amendment to the Sylvan Glen Buildings and Improvements General Repairs Capital Fund for a not to exceed amount of $76,090. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions this evening? Anybody like to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I4, Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County Purchasing Cooperative, replacement of electrical service line and panel located at Sylvan Glen Golf Course, as printed in the agenda. Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve I4 Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Oakland County Purchasing Cooperative, replacement of electrical service line and panel located at the Sylvan Glen Golf Course, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is I5, a bid waiver, storm pipe repairs, and that'll be introduced by Kurt Bovensteep, our Public Works Director. Welcome back, Kurt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. requesting a bid waiver for kind of a unique circumstance here in the city. Most of the storm work is done by our Streets and Drains Division in-house staff, and it's done through easements. Most of this is in backyards, and we gain access through easements. This particular project abuts a private pond that has a current contractor working in that pond. Coincidentally, the current contractor is approved through the Oakland County Water Resource Commission. And then we solicited them to see what it would cost to perform the work opposed to us using the limited access we have to get to this area. The contractor Trojan Development agreed to extend its pricing that they would use for the Water Resource Commission to fix the end section of this storm pipe. So again, this is kind of a unique situation where the only contractor that is really able to perform the work outside of us going through our easement is the current contractor on site. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Any questions from council on I-5? Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga.
Thank you, Mayor. Kurt, just wanted to ask, will there be any disruption to residents on River Chase? And if so, what would that look like?
Thank you. There won't be any direct disruption. The contractor is just working outside of the boundaries of the private pond, which is one of the reasons why we're requesting this bid waiver, because there would be much more disruption if we were to come in through the described easement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Someone would like to move the resolution? Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-5 bid waiver storm pipe repairs as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-5 bid waiver storm pipe repairs as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, Low Bidders Meeting Specifications, Town Center Public Space, also introduced by Kurt Bovensee, Public Works Director. Go ahead, Kurt.
Thank you again. Although equally as important, a little bit more exciting than the storm proposal that you just resolved on. Back in January, we brought council a concept that was then approved by the Parks and Recreation Board. If you remember the interesting video that OHM put together. With council's approval, we moved ahead with going and engineered that project. And before you today is a contract to be awarded to Bricks Contracting to actually make this idea come to life. With that, it would be OHM's responsibility to oversee this contract since they're most familiar with it. I did receive quite a few compliments to the project. It's an exciting opportunity to create this unused space into a public space that offers much bigger opportunity in the future. And included in this memo is we had the pedestrian bridge included in the bid documentation, but we decided not to go with the pedestrian bridge for a couple of reasons. One is we didn't feel that the cost was worth the benefit. The project still works without the connective pedestrian bridge to the community center property. We would just use the existing sidewalk to the community center property to access it. And additionally, we did not feel that the $4,000 deduction to go from from copper conductors to aluminum conductors was worth it as well. So with that, I'll answer any questions. I think this is going to be a pretty exciting project to see come to life.
Thank you, Kurt. Questions from council? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kurt, for your leadership on this project. I'm very excited about it. Mike, and the progress is moving along really nicely, and I'm very impressed by that. My question is, what is the status of, council was informed that there may be a possible earmark from the federal government that could help support an even more elaborate structure there. How do we feel? How is that process? How did that earmark come to fruition? How did that drawing you sent us kind of who designed that and what's the status of it? And if it did get approved, how would that change this project, or would it just be added in addition to the original project? And so really it's not an immediate concern. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, thank you. There's a lot of questions in there, so if I miss one, please remind me. So the project was designed to one day host a large pavilion. The idea of a large pavilion started actually from some Troy Community Foundation members wanting to do something bigger in the city and participate in that. One of their members' wives actually did the conceptual drawings to that pavilion, and it was based on the pavilion in Dodge Park in Sterling Heights. So we had this idea of a pavilion somewhere in the Civic Center campus, and then we designed the current open space to hopefully one day host that. And this was purely coincidental that the earmark money became available, and it's, Congressman Stevens started soliciting for projects, and we thought this was a really good fit because it's so community orientated. So I think we're one of 10 projects that were forwarded on. We're not sure of how successful we'll be. I know we put a lot of effort to hopefully be successful. We had several letters of support from the community, and the fact that the project is nearly ready to go, that we had this idea all along, I think will benefit the community and hopefully one day get fully funded.
Thank you. And I'll take this opportunity. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Just really quick, Mayor and Council. The Congresswoman Haley Stevens reached out, her staff reached out to me directly to get these projects. The funny thing is that I'm old enough to remember earmarks, and I had a previous career where I worked in it quite a bit. But the Congresswoman's staff has never worked in this era of earmarks, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But the Congresswoman did submit it as one of her 10 projects, and there really is some uncertainty what happens now. So we're just sort of in a waiting game.
Thank you, Mark. And just for the record, I don't think they're calling them earmarks anymore. But
no, they're not.
That's what we're calling them because we're But I actually just want to quickly say thank you to both you and Kurt for jumping on this so quickly. Sometimes things move really fast coming out of Washington D.C. and I know that you, although Kurt, you said you had a lot of this concept already going on in your mind and as a plan of some sorts. It didn't mean it was ready to submit a full application with letters of support and the memos that did go with it. So thank you both. Mark, I know, I think I can say this. I know that when Congresswoman Stevens' office reached out to you initially, it was a little bit of a, well, what's going on? Do you know anything about this? I mean, I think we had that conversation. So, I mean, it was a quick turnaround, and Kurt, I know you spearheaded a lot of the wrangling of support letters and getting things going. So, it is another opportunity to thank you, staff, for being so quick to respond and for hopefully getting something before the Congresswoman that she can then submit. Well, she has submitted it, that will get something really good for Troy and its residents. So, let's fingers crossed, and we'll see how that plays.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I regularly attend Zoom meetings with the Congresswoman and her staff, and if we hear anything new, we'll definitely let council know what's happening.
Very good. Thank you. I think the initial expectation was it was going to be a couple months at least before they heard anything, but that was probably already almost a month ago or close to a month ago. So we'll see. It seems like, well, I'll hold my tongue. But any other questions for Kurt? Or go ahead.
Just to follow up. So what is the timeline for this? When do we anticipate, breaking ground? When do we, I know we already kind of doing some stuff there already, but when do we anticipate, starting the major construction, and when do we anticipate this is ready to be used by the public?
Sure. As you mentioned, we did save some costs with some of our in-house staff during the slower time as spring sprung here, and we removed the asphalt pavement from the parking lot. Once council approves this, we'll go through some insurance documentation with the contractor. We'll get that all arranged. I'm assuming that we'll have a start time of about 2 to 3 weeks, assuming this passes tonight. And then we have a substantial completion date just before Troy Days. So I don't think we'll have full turf established before Troy Days. But we're hopeful that at some respect, we can do some incorporation with this open space with the festival.
Well,
Mayor?
that's really, really exciting.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Kurt, we expect to move the farmer's market there, right?
That is correct. The farmer's market is intended to go into the space once it's completed. And in the meantime, while it's under construction, the farmer's market will be held in the community center parking lot.
Thank you. Any other questions on I6? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, Low Bidders Meeting Specifications, Town Center Public Space, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, that we approve I6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, Low Bidders Meeting Specifications, Town Center Public Space, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Kurt. Next up on the agenda is I7, approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget, and that'll be introduced by Glenn Lapin, our Economic Development Specialist. Hi, Glenn.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. At its April 20th meeting, the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority recommended approval of the 2021-22 budget. And just to highlight a couple of things on the budget, MJR, which is the movie theaters, obviously, over at Maple and Livernois, that is coming upon in 22 its final repayment into the revolving loan fund. So it is, that's project started back in 2013 and has been a tremendous success. Other projects, Somerset Shops is now complete and is substantially occupied. And we are making the first payment to them in terms of reimbursement through their Brownfield redevelopment plan. And that is for the 21 program year. And we're looking at Uptown Apartments. Those apartments are nearing completion. The first units have opened to residents. And we expect in 2022, that'll start generating tax capture. We'll probably make the first payment of reimbursement to them in 2022. The Regency of Troy project, they will be resubmitting plans due to market conditions and changes that have occurred in the past couple of years since the plan was approved. They'll be resubmitting that. And also likewise for the Harrison Poolside Troy project over on Stutt Street, due to rising construction costs, they're going to be resubmitting plans for that, which would probably reduce the number of units. So the beauty of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and of tax increment financing in general, unless they are generating tax capture with a completed project, there is no reimbursement. So they have to, be done with the project, and it has to be yielding tax capture advantage to the city, and therefore that's when they can start, receiving reimbursement under the plan. So it's a good program and helps act as a spark for some important developments here in the city. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
Thank you, Glenn. That was a little bit of a sneak peek on some economic updates, it sounded like, as well. But any questions for Glenn? I know some were submitted in writing earlier. We've seen those, and they'll be, of course, posted. Any additional questions? All right, someone like to move the resolution. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I7, approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve I-7, approval of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, TBRA, proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for their recommendation and, of course, for their service on the board. Next up is I-8, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee, proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget, also introduced by Glenn Lapin. Go ahead, Glenn.
At its April 26th meeting of the Troy Local Development Finance Authority, the LDFA recommended approval of its 2021-22 budget. The budget for this committee, we're being very conservative going forward. There are some unknowns out there given what has occurred over the past year in terms of property taxes and property tax capture going forward. So the budget is rightfully conservative moving forward, and obviously we will adjust as we go. But this has been a tremendous benefit and program, particularly which allowed for Automation Alley to be here in the city and to prosper the way it is doing, and for them to support the numerous businesses that they are supporting throughout the region here, particularly technology-based companies and Industry 4.0. So the big program right now through this LDFA budget, we're assisting them on infrastructure improvements at Automation Alley, including redoing their parking lot, which has occurred in a couple of phases, and we have one more phase to go on that. And the budget also supports them on operations and marketing, which is basically the membership. So we work with them on that as well. So if there are any questions, be happy to answer it.
Thank you, Glenn. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Glenn, for all your hard work with this. My question was, it just popped in my head. Is there any progress with the pedestrian bridge that was being proposed from LDFA across to the Troy Sports Center area? I don't know if the LDFA budget contributes to that. Maybe this is kind of not relevant, but I'm just curious if I haven't heard anything about that. Is that still happening, or did that get shelved?
It's not a bridge. But go ahead, Glenn.
Well, yeah.
So that is in front of Altair in that area, and Altair had some preliminary redevelopment plans for their site, which have been stalled at the present time. So I think a lot of that depends upon how the traffic goes in and out in terms of the final plans for them. City Manager Miller, and I'm not sure if you'd like to add on to that.
Go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The LDFA did allocate funds, and the traffic signalization was installed, but because of the delay in the development plans, we've delayed the project because we don't know exactly where the entrance is going to be honest. So once we hear more specifics about what Altair's plans are, we can revisit that.
Thank you. Additional questions for Glenn? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Abraham, thank you.
I'll move I-8, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-8, approval of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Motion carries. And again, we thank the Local Development Finance Authority, Troy Subcommittee for their recommendation and their continued service on the board. And thank you, Glenn. Next up is I-9, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority, Tdda, proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget. And that'll be introduced by Mark Miller, City Manager, who's also the executive, I forget your title on the DDA.
Executive Director.
Executive Director of the DDA. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. On April 21st, the Downtown Development Authority did recommend approval of this budget. I just kind of want to go back a little bit. Our Downtown Development Authority actually is a fantastic story because after the effects of the Great Recession and the reduction of tax increment to the DDA was unable to service their bonds. The city came forward and offered their full faith and credit and AAA bond rating, and the DDA pledged all of their tax revenues to service those bonds. And then we move along a few more years and we started also allocating money for administrative services, audit fees, tax tribunal. That was a big deal back when properties were falling, but not now necessarily. Maintenance of the corridor, and also the QDI, Quality Development Initiative. And then last year, the Forbes companies were contractually obligated to make a $4 million payment, just a little over $4 million to the DDA for repayment for the parking deck on the north, Somerset North. So in the last fiscal year, the DDA and the city did take approximately $3 million from the approximate $4 million payment and refinanced, technically wasn't refinanced because it was a whole new series, and wrote down that debt by $3 million. So that means $1 million went into fund balance of the DDA. And so therefore, when the dust settles of this new bond series, actually the DDA will have a considerable more amount of revenues each year, plus they will have a substantial building fund balance. So with that, we have also noted that the landscape in the Big Beaver median right of way is getting old and tired. It's a very tough climate for plants to live in. So City Attorney Bloom and Glenn Lapin and I have responded to some revisions which Ms. Bloom prepared to the DDA plan. And so we'll move that forward, which will allow us to do additional design work and potentially in the future pay for additional landscaping. So Kurt Bovenseep and I are working on an RFQ/RFP to try to find a firm that has experience of designing and bidding out plants and plantscape in a tough climate like that with all the salt spray. So Kurt and I are working with the DDA to develop that. Both the DDA and City Council will have some revisions to the DDA plan presented to you in the upcoming months. So the DDA is doing fairly well. We're able to increase the administrative expenses, and that's a reimbursement from the DDA to the general fund for all of the city attorney's time, my time, and all the other staff that works administratively on this. So this was recommended for approval by the DDA, and I'm happy to say that DDA is in a very good place to move forward, and good things are happening. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for City Manager Miller? Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranger.
Just a small question. I noticed in the budget for this current fiscal year, as well as for this budget that we're approving for the next fiscal year, there's a line item around district promotion. That's the marketing for $25,000. I'm wondering what was the decision to move forward in this current year, and was there any conclusion over that discussion about what to do on marketing?
Well, Glenn and I had a meeting with the chairman of the DDA who strongly supports this, and we're developing the ideas a little bit more. And it's kind of tough to do it in COVID times. So that idea is still being explored on what exactly to do, and no expenditures actually have been expended along that line item to this point in time. But we're trying to move forward. Glenn, I know you're still on. Do you have anything else you would like to comment on that?
No, other than the chair of the DDA certainly has his ideas, and his staff has presented some ideas as well. And we'll be sharing some of those ideas with probably a subcommittee of the DDA to see if there's any traction with that and go from there.
Thank you, Glenn and Mark, and good question, Rebecca. Any other questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga.
I'll move I-9, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the council packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Hamilton. We approve I-9, approval of the Troy Downtown Development Authority, TDDA, proposed fiscal year 21-22 and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries. And again, thank you to our DDA for your recommendation and for your continued service to our city. And thank you for the presentation, Mark. Next up is I-10, amendment to Chapter 20, Water and Sanitary Sewer Rates of the Troy City Code, and that'll be introduced by Chief Financial Officer Rob Malzik. Hi, Rob. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is our annual update of our Chapter 20 water rates that we need to do per the Troy City Code. And I'm pleased to announce to you that Kurt Bovenseat, Paul Trosper, myself, and Lisa Burnham, we spent a lot of time making sure that our reserves are in good shape, and that the beauty of having a 3-year budget is this rate increase was in last year's budget. So in other words, there's no surprises. It's going to go up 2.7%, and this is basically the passing on of other costs from the Great Lakes Water Authority and the Oakland County Water Resource Commission. And I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Rob. One of the benefits of a 3-year budget, right?
Correct.
Knowing what's coming. Any questions from council? Someone want to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-10, amendment to Chapter 20, Water and Sanitary Sewer Rates of the Troy City Code as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, that we approve I-10, amendment to Chapter 20, Water and Sanitary Sewer Rates of the Troy City Code as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Rob. Next up is I-11, State of Emergency, and that'll be introduced by Assistant City Manager Bob Brunner. Hi, Bob.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Tonight, I want to facilitate a discussion about our local state of emergency and specifically when to end it. And today is a hopeful day for the state of Michigan as we've reached our 55% vaccination rate. So it's been a roller coaster ride for sure. I want to talk a little bit about the history that I didn't include in the memo as a reminder, kind of how we got here in the first place. You'll recall that last year, the legislature and the governor amended the Open Meetings Act to provide for remote participation in meetings, electronic meetings. The first time that happened was in October, and our cases at that time in October were really low. And so the bill that was signed into law at that time gave local communities the opportunity to have remote meetings until December 31st. And then when December rolled around, we were kind of peaking at the second big wave. And so the Open Meetings Act was amended again to allow for electronic meetings and remote participation through March 31st, basically for any reason or no reason. And after March 31st, there's some other provisions about being able to have remote participation and electronic meetings if there's a local emergency declared. Ironically, similar to what happened in December, same thing kind of happened in March, where the case rate in March was almost a straight line up. So March started off really good. By the time we got to March 31st, we were on our way to the third peak. And so City Council took action to declare a state of emergency on April 12th. And so that resolution states that City Council will revisit that emergency declaration tonight, and that'll be terminated at some point through affirmative action of the City Council. So on April 21st, when City Council first talked about this, there was some talk about, how will we know when this is over and when to end the emergency. And during the last City Council meetings, staff had included a report that gave some information about the Oakland County case rate, the My Safe Start map, and some other potential sources of information on, our metrics that the City Council might use to decide when to end the emergency. And so I started 2 days after, I think on April 28th, drafting the memo about the local state of emergency. I got to say, the first draft looks a lot different than the draft you received. The first draft had charts and graphs of all sorts of public health measures that the City Council might want to look at. But ultimately, we changed course and provided information about really relying more on the state epidemic orders, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services orders. That's the orders that has limited gatherings since, back since October of last year. So rather than trying to figure out what are the appropriate public health measures ourselves, maybe looking at the state and following their lead on that. So tonight, and throughout this journey, like I said, we've heard a little bit from some council members. There's been a little discussion here and there about what measures you're interested in. But tonight, we'd like to facilitate more discussion to get some input on City Council so that we can basically more effectively monitor the criteria that you're interested in examining to end the local state of emergency. So tonight, the City Council can vote to continue the emergency. You could vote to end it immediately, although that would pose some problems logistically since we've already posted some upcoming meetings to be remote. So whenever you decide to end the local emergency, we're hoping for some kind of transition period where we can, notice the meetings appropriately. So rather than, provide a ton of different options of what you could look at, I'd really just like to facilitate a discussion and hear from you what criteria you'd like to look at.
Thank you, Bob. And we did get in our question and answer, kind of a late submittal today from City Attorney Bloom, a continuation of the I-11 memo that talked about some specific options we may have. something just made me laugh, and I know we're talking about a state of emergency, but the irony that we were going into an emergency and discussing that in person, but now here we are talking about maybe going out of it virtually. It's just a very strange, it feels funny. I don't know why that's making me laugh. But anyway, I guess I'll open it up to council for initial comments or thoughts or questions. Councilmember Hoderick, I see your hand up. We'll call on you first.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate all the background information that was provided to us in the agenda packet and even the additional information today. Been pondering and thinking about this. The good news is since we declared our local state of emergency, at that time our hospitals were filled and at capacity, and we were worried. We still had staff members, and I know personally here on council, some of us mid-vax or waiting to be vaccinated. As case numbers were really rising so high. So I really appreciate this, staff's efforts to help us, I think, do the right thing at the time and heed the guidance that said to really limit gatherings as best we could. Since then, such a positive turn. We see the reports coming from Beaumont hospitals and that coming down, and the case numbers are coming down as the vaccination rates are going up in Oakland County. We see now it's over 60%. And just today, the state hit the 55% milestone that triggers in 2 weeks from now being able to resume in-person work in office settings. Combined with the fact that I believe, and City Manager Miller, maybe you can nod and confirm, knowing that anyone who has wanted to be vaccinated in City Hall and city staff that would be gathered with us has had the opportunity to be vaccinated, to get out and do it. I believe that's the case. We're not forcing anyone, but I wanted to make sure that everyone feels like they've had the opportunity if they wanted to be vaccinated. I think the combined metrics indicate that we could be looking at now, terminating our local state of emergency effective 2 weeks from now, per the metric that the state put in since we first had this discussion. The milestone vaccination rate metrics, and that would be my proposal, would be to use, to me, that 55% vaccination rate 2 weeks from now is May 24th. That would be our next council meeting, that we could then go to the hybrid approach that we were looking to go to before we had to declare a local state of emergency. So that, I kind of even somewhat drafted a motion, but that's where my thinking is. And if folks have a different thought, I would welcome it.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Anyone else like to touch on that? I appreciate, Ellen, the thought you put into that. I'll start with that I agree that, I hearing what Bob had said and knowing that we have a planning commission meeting tomorrow night, and we certainly, I don't think, should do anything that ends anything immediately, and allowing for a transition period would be the wise thing to do. So appreciate that thought given to that as well. Someone else on council? Ellen, do you have something in your hand? What is that? Is that a prop?
I'm sorry, the cat was coming up again. I wanted to, if you'd like, I could go ahead and put a motion on the table.
You're free to do that. Maybe that's a good way to have a discussion.
And then we can open more discussion if we'd like. Okay. I would move that the Tri-City Council terminate the local state of emergency effective May 24th, 2021, which is 2 weeks from today, when the state vaccination rate hit the 55% vaccination rate, the benchmark allowing for in-person work to resume. And the city of Troy would proceed then with the hybrid meeting approach that it had planned for before we had to declare the local state of emergency.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve the motion brought to the table by Councilmember Hoderick as just read into the record. Discussion would be appropriate here. Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga.
May I still ask a question that kind of
Questions or discussion? Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. So recognizing, of course, and have been following very closely what the governor has been stating, as I'm working on a pandemic task force to get, folks back into an office as well. One question that has struck me in terms of us and our experience is that recognizing what this means for us and say planning commission, recognizing we have podiums, we have plexiglass. What does this mean for other committees, knowing that this decision affects them? What would that look like for a larger committee like Global Troy or others that typically use meeting rooms? Would they move to the community center and be socially distanced? How would that happen so they can still meet?
Thank you. That's a good question. Assistant City Attorney Bruner, I saw your hand go up, so I'll go ahead and let you answer.
Assistant City Manager, but
what did I say?
Attorney.
Okay. That's interesting. Go ahead, Bob. Bob, are you ready? Go ahead.
I am. This may be a memory test, folks, but I shared with you weeks ago the plans we were making for the hybrid meetings, which was really kind of a procedure on how we were going to conduct all meetings. And so the plan is for all meetings to be conducted in council chamber because of the cameras and the audio visual capabilities, the plexiglass and the other measures that we put in place there, so that that's really the only room that we have where we can conduct a hybrid meeting, where the public body can convene and we can conduct a hybrid meeting. So the decision to end the local state of emergency is a decision to also have all the public body meetings in council chamber at City Hall.
Thank you. As a quick follow-up to that, does anybody know offhand the largest or one of the larger committees that would meet? I mean, is there a spacing issue?
I think it's the Tdda, and it depends on how many people attend in person versus not. We can, that's going to be one of the responsibilities of folks like Glenn, who are liaison to a board or commission, is to actually figure out the seating chart and where people are going to be.
Very good. Go ahead, Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga.
Just a follow-up question in terms of cleaning. What will that be like, recognizing that according to MIOSHA guidelines, they recommend that, or their requirement is that there really shouldn't be a sharing of desk space in an office. I know this isn't exactly an office. Just how will that work in terms of kind of recognizing those MIOSHA guidelines and making sure everyone who may sit in a seat will feel comfortable sitting there?
Good question as well. The city's cleaning contractor will be in to clean council chambers on a routine basis. We also have disinfectant and cloths basically in all the offices in City Hall, and we can have some in council chambers. So I know, sometimes when you go into a place, you don't want to count on the fact that somebody else has cleaned it for you. You want to wipe it down yourself. So we'll have spray disinfectants and cloth in there if people want to take that on individually as well.
Thank you. Additional questions or discussion comments? Councilmember Hamilton.
Just wanted to ask city staff, do they feel comfortable with Councilmember Hoderick's resolution? Do they feel the 2-week period is a good enough lead time? And you feel that city staff will be ready to go with these meetings without feeling they're at risk and making everything comfortable? Or do you think that we should modify the resolution at all?
I don't know if they'll answer that part. City Manager Miller?
Well, first of all, it's hard to know what everyone's opinions are on this. I think, though, that we all know we have to get back in real person time, and we take every effort to sanitize. Like, we have done job interviews in person, and we, right in the middle of the desk, we have surgical grade sanitizing wipes. I will be the first one to recognize that, because at the same time, we're going to have to start reintroducing our staff to in-person work. And I feel that it's going to take some people, it's going to be harder than others. And I think, though, we will transition from a staff standpoint, but I don't think that staff necessarily will revolt, if that's a good word. It's not really a good word to use, but I think, though, that honestly, there'll be an adjustment. Some people, it might be a little tougher than others, but no one has really spoken to me in opposition of working in person, per se, but I'm not so gullible to think that some people are going to have a transition from working totally from home and then moving to the office. And so, we have been working, this is a little different than meetings, but we've been working about creating a new virtual or work policy, because we really never had one. It was someone wanted to work in the afternoon. So we're going to be conscious. We're going to, from a staff standpoint, we're going to stage people coming into City Hall, because we also have some issues that we have staff that have taken over conference rooms that have to work in City Hall because they need the space. So we're going to be careful. We're going to be mindful and stage staff coming into City Hall. But with this change, we are going to start phasing in staff moving in. And once we have more developed plans, we'll share that with council.
Thank you. Assistant City Manager, Brunner.
Yeah, thanks. I certainly don't want to speak for anybody else, but as it relates to meetings specifically, we met in person on April 1st, and I'm sorry, April 12th. Staff facilitated that, made that happen. I didn't hear any complaints, but I don't want to speak for anybody else. So as it pertains to going back to meeting in person, I don't think we have any problems with that. We've also, different city employees had access to vaccination at different times. So, 4 weeks ago, a lot of the city employees who were involved in facilitating in-person meetings, it was very early on, and they were just being able to get vaccinated at that time. And so now, 4 weeks later, I think, everybody who wants it has received it. I think earlier today, the Recreation Department announced that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine clinic scheduled at the community center has been canceled because there were only 16 people interested. And that was not just employees, but community members as well. So, we're getting to the point now where everybody who wants to be vaccinated has had the opportunity. I think that's true for city staff that have to work in person to facilitate the meetings. The other thing is that statistically speaking, there's probably some folks among us who haven't been vaccinated because there's 55% of us have been vaccinated, 45 haven't. So there may be some people who have opted not to get vaccinated, who will be affected by the decision and have to work in person again. But that's their choice. And like I said, I haven't received any complaints or concerns even. I think what will be more interesting to see what happens is with the members of the other public bodies, whether they will want to participate remotely, and we'll be having a lot of hybrid meetings where we have a combination of in-person and online participation. And so for some of our public bodies, which have relatively short and quick meetings. Implementing the hybrid option may add a level of complexity to those meetings. So that's something else that, you know, we'll just have to see how that shakes out.
Thank you, Bob. I think just to be clear with Councilmember Hoderick's resolution, it's not mandating City Hall return to work policies, has nothing to do with that. That's a city management decision on how you bring that. This is specific to whether or not we still have the need to have virtual meetings to prevent widespread injury or loss of life, which is the authority we're given to declare this state of emergency. So good conversation, don't get me wrong, good information to hear, but not necessarily pertinent to the specific resolution that's on the table. And I saw Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga was quizzically raising her hand. So go ahead.
Another quick question. So again, to jog my memory, Assistant City Manager Bruner, with those choosing hybrid, especially for other committees, would it be like us, you need to have a medical reason to be able to choose the virtual option?
Yeah, under the Open Meetings Act, medical condition or military service, the act doesn't define medical condition, and so we'll construe that broadly and leave it to the individual members to decide for themselves what that means.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I will say that Bob and Mark, you successfully created a system that worked very smoothly with Councilmember Hoderick, who attended virtually when we did meet in person. So I appreciate that it was, although she was very loud and very large on the screen, it was a very seamless experience, at least from my perception as the chair. So I appreciate that, and I please convey that to, if we do what we're doing tonight, let other boards and committees know that it can be done in a way that's meaningful. Additional discussion or questions? Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, Doctor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to, I'll be brief because I think Councilmember Hoderick outlined, you know, very well, you know, kind of what I'm thinking is, I'm sorry, kind of my concerns. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had a little break in just when I was talking. But yeah, but you know, a lot of the metrics that I look at are the percent positivity. Obviously, they're still a little higher than what I would like to see, but I think the other metrics are, you know, moving in the right direction. Obviously, we're in a completely different place now than we were when we declared the emergency. You know, the hospitalization rate is lower, the vaccination rate is up. I am optimistic that the vaccination rate will continue to increase a little, at least a little bit, because Pfizer, you know, got its FDA approval, and it is going to lower its age for vaccination to 12, which is great news. But I think that all these things are moving in the right direction. I think that, you know, Bob has really put together a great program. I think that it will be safe. So I feel very comfortable that we will be able to return back to in-person meetings, you know, in 2 weeks, or it would be in 2 weeks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yes. And I think that we can do this safely with kind of the procedures that are in place. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks. Additional comments, questions? City Manager Miller. I think you're muted, Mark.
I did.
I know you're muted, but
sorry, I thought I clicked it. I don't know about all the other people on city council or staff, but during that hybrid meeting, I had real difficulties hearing people, and I think the partitions blocked it. So, Bob, you know, if we can kind of test that, because I really couldn't. I probably only heard 60% what was said by council members at that meeting.
That's actually a good point. Maybe that's why I thought Ellen was so loud. It was because everyone else was so quiet. I don't know if that's just a volume adjustment. I know City Clerk Dixon's had a different microphone, and it was a little harder to hear her as well. The masks obviously play a role in that. So I don't know if our volume can be increased, or if we need to be, I hate to lean into our mics or something like that, but if whatever we need to do, if you could let us know, that could help, because at times it was difficult. Not all the time, but at times. So good point, Mark. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, just City Attorney Bloom, just to make sure the resolution that Councilmember Hoderick read, that works, number one, for what we're trying to achieve. And that date, that doesn't need to be a date. I mean, that date is fine. That, I think it said it will terminate that day. That means we would be in person that night. Is that?
That is my understanding of the resolution, and that I think it satisfies the intent.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm supportive of the resolution. I thank Councilmember Hoderick for bringing it forward to the table. I also thank Assistant City Manager Bruner and for his presentation and for the memo he presented. The further information compiled and provided to us this afternoon by City Attorney Bloom. And also for everyone who's working hard to get us through this pandemic. I do feel very comfortable that we're in a much different place than we were on April 12th, which took us a little bit by surprise, because the previous meeting we thought we were in a much better place. So the good news about the metrics we're using today, and the expectation is, the one good thing about vaccination rates is they can't go down. So once we're at a certain point, unless I guess we could add a bunch of population in, but once we're at a certain point, the only place they can go is up. So I'm less concerned about that being an issue. That shouldn't be changed. The numbers from Beaumont that we see are going in the absolute right direction. And like Mayor Pro Tem Brooks talked about, the positivity rate is still a little bit high, but it's nowhere near what it was a month ago, when it was appallingly high, especially as it related to the rest of the country. So for those reasons, I'm fully supportive. That, and also that Oakland County is above 60% for the vaccination rate, which is a good for us. So that said, I will call for the vote from Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. I think, yes, it does. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anybody have an item from the consent agenda they'd like to pull this evening? Would Councilmember Abraham like to move the consent agenda? Go ahead, Councilmember Abraham.
I would love to. I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Motion carries. All items on the consent agenda have been approved this evening. Next up on the agenda is memorandums and future council agenda items. I actually have 3 this evening, which is exciting, which means we'll be busy at the next council meeting in person, it sounds like. May 24th, 2021, there'll be a zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 254, cluster square footage. Also on May 24th, 2021 is a zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 255, transitions in NN, neighborhood node zoning district. And May 24th, 2021, rezoning request, file number Z2019-0039, proposed Addison Heights subdivision rezoning east of Livernois, south side of Arthur, Sidwell number 88-20-27-307-033, section 27 from P, the vehicular parking district, to R1E, one family residential district. I guess I'm going to say this as a reminder, we will still be allowing for virtual public comment based on the rules we made this evening. So for those watching at home now or later, just because we will be meeting in person doesn't mean you have to come in person to submit your public comment. The City Council rules of procedure that we amended earlier at the start of this meeting will continue regardless of the state of emergency, the local state of emergency. So you'll still have the opportunity to submit public comment by voicemail, email by 4 p.m. that day, or to participate remotely on Zoom, I believe, as they are now, and speak during public comment portion of those meetings, those public hearings. Next up are council referrals. There are none this evening, so we'll move to reports. Does anybody have any comments on the reports this evening? Okay, no reports. So council comments. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I know earlier when we appointed to the Charter Revision Committee, Mayor, you mentioned, you kind of made a quick comment that you'd like to see that committee reconvene. And I agree completely. I actually had it as an item I wanted to mention in council comments. I don't know what the next steps are. I know there are a few, kind of cleanup items in the charter that we need to take care of. There may be, we talked in the past about possible ethics related, kind of tweaking the ethics related language in the charter, but I'd like to see Charter Revision Committee kind of handle that and take a look at it. And I don't know what the steps are. We would need to reconvene them, but do we need to have like a specific charter amendment or things that we want them to look at, or just kind of give them a general mandate to just look at the charter and to see different things that we can do? I don't know if city staff can speak to that, but what would it take to do that?
The Attorney Bloom.
So the Charter Revision Committee can look at items on their own, or they can take referrals from the city administration or from city council. So there are a number of ways to get items before the Charter Revision Committee. We have not met because a lot of the cleanup has been done already. Some of the charter issues were necessitated by changes in state law. There are a couple of cleanup things that we should be doing. There are some asterisks in the charter right now because our charter is superseded by state law in a couple of instances. So again, if you have a list of things, we certainly can bring those forward to the committee to have them look at. But again, I want to urge caution. You don't want to be modifying your charter. It is your constitution for the city, analogous to your constitution. So that is a document that should be sparingly amended. And of course, amended by the people. It has to be approved by the people as well.
Of course. And it has to put it on the ballot, it needs like 3,000 signatures or 5 affirmative votes of council. Yeah, one thing I noticed is that there's discussion in Lansing about changing the primary date from August to June, and in our charter it specifically says that if like a council member resigns or something, I think that happened to Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga last year, that it has to be in the August primary. So if they change it to June, we should probably change the language maybe to be whenever state determines is the normal primary. I know there were a few things mentioned a few years ago about gender neutral language, a few other things. So maybe those are the kind of things that I have in mind for that. But I'll try to compile a list of different things that maybe we discussed in the past and submit it, and other council members can do as well. But I'd like to see that happen soon, so maybe we can get some language on the ballot this November. My second comment was about the library. Given the improved COVID rates, do we have any timeline for when the library will be open? I haven't heard anything on that.
Mayor?
City Manager Miller, go ahead.
Yes, the library director is working on a plan, and in the very near future, we'll share that with council. Okay,
and then finally, today the U.S. Treasury announced some guidelines for the American Rescue Plan, as mentioned earlier, and I actually went through and read the 150 pages of it. I skimmed some of it. I didn't read every single word, but there are a few. I know that in the future we're going to have probably end up having special sessions or special discussions about how we're going to spend that money. We're getting $8.1 million, probably in 2 tranches, half of it in the next month and then the other half in a year. But I just wanted to put on the table a few ideas I had for that. Of course, we'll defer to our finance director or to CFO and staff for a lot of things, but I just to facilitate discussion and for people to know what I'm thinking. Just a few ideas that I had that I'd like to see if they could fit into the framework of what we want to do. But one thing is possibly expanding the home chore program. I know that a lot of residents struggle financially, and for residents that have, taken care of your lawn and when it snows in the winter, shoveling the snow, it's a great program we run using our CDBG dollars right now that serves about 70 to 90 people. But I think there's an opportunity to expand that just based on the current program we have. And based on what I read in the guidance, I think that would count if there's community members, seniors that are struggling due to the economic effects of COVID, that would be a great program that we could support. Another thing I've thought about, and I've had a lot of residents talk to me about, is mental health. Both from the city could help facilitate, maybe working through Oakland County Health Division or something else, providing mental health support to all of Troy residents that have been struggling with that. And I've also heard about communities that through the police, when there's calls involving mental health crises, we could provide mental health workers that could support the police to deal with those situations. And then on top of that, there's a lot of revenue replacement that would happen. I read about how the revenue replacement formula works, which is really interesting. I'm curious to hear from CFO Malzik about their estimate for how much we'll get to use on that, but I think it's quite a bit. Basically, the revenue we've lost since fiscal year 2019 will be able to be replaced with some of that 8.1 million over the next 4 years too. So I'm really interested to hear from city staff on what they think the amount will be. But I just wanted to put that on the table. Obviously, council will decide how we spend those dollars, but those are just a few ideas I had for programs that I think would really help our community deal with COVID and the economic fallout of COVID.
Thanks, Councilmember Hamilton. I'm going to ask city management. I don't think the rest of us are prepared to provide ideas on where those funds should be used tonight. I don't think that's necessarily the best way, considering we're still waiting for regulations. I'm hoping, and I know City Manager Miller is working with his team and CFO Malzik to thoroughly vet those regulations from a municipal finance standpoint and provide us with some guidelines for us to look at. I appreciate Councilmember Hamilton, of course, coming forward. You said you had ideas last time we met, so I knew you have them, and I appreciate them. I certainly have lots of ideas too. Ideas, though, need to be looked at through the lens of what we can do, and also recognize that there's got to be, I think, a good system and process in place, so we're not just throwing a bunch of well-intentioned spaghetti on the wall. But we really have to look at this, because this is an opportunity that it's got to be. I think it's got to be really well managed. So. If it's okay, I would prefer city management that we stick with kind of the idea of you come to us with some, not your ideas, obviously we're a policy driven body, but at least some guidelines so we can think about that. And maybe it's time to look at, Mark, when we want to schedule some of these initial conversations, when, I don't mean right this second, but if you could reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking from that respect, so that certainly there's a need to get funds in the hands of certain organizations or people, and we want to address that as quickly as possible. But we also need to recognize that our county is getting substantially more money than us, and I want to make sure we're not unnecessarily going after the same resources and leaving somebody else out, if that makes sense. So it's going to have to be a big collaborative process, which sounds horrible for government bodies in general, but that's the way we're stuck with it. And does that make sense, Mark? I mean, I think that's where you're at.
Yes, just really quick, I'll be short. Just this afternoon, CFO Malzak sent me a PowerPoint regarding this. There was some more information out there. And we're also working on scheduling a series of study meetings, which this would be one topic that we're going to come to you in a meeting or two to schedule those in the near future. Like I said, I think it's going to be a mini budget process for these dollars.
And David, honestly, I know that you're excited about being able to do something, and I appreciate that. And I have lots of ideas too. I'm just not ready to put them out there on the table yet tonight, and based for all the reasons I said. But thank you for what you mentioned is absolutely wonderful. So please don't think I don't think that.
No, it's fine. I just was excited and wanted to throw it out there. It's okay.
I know. When the rest of us read through the 150 pages, we'll catch up with you. How about that? Additional council comments? No? The council that talks so much. Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add a couple of things I wanted to just go back to, a couple proclamations, and just go back to the budget, which kind of is a bit of a future, past and present kind of reflection. So as I was really thinking about the budget, I was thinking just how a year ago we were all asking all of these questions about the impact. What would be the impact of COVID on the budget? I know a year ago we were hearing from residents about what would be the impact of COVID on the budget and the city. And just thinking a year ago, we were wondering about the library, knowing that we'd have to pass a new millage for its funding. And then just thinking where we are today, and just so proud at how and where we have landed, just thanks to the skillful management of our city staff, given that we received $4 million in CARES Act funding. And now it sounds like, if I got the figure right, 8.1 million from the American Rescue Plan dollars. And it turns out, I was just as a follow-up to Council Member Hamilton, actually a good friend of mine, I just learned on Friday, he actually drafted that guidance at Treasury. And it's good to know that as an entitlement community, we will get that money straight from Treasury. So a lot of possibilities down the road. And then with the library, I think what just makes me excited is in this budget that we've just approved, we're talking about makerspace, a youth area renovation, new adult study area, enhancing the collection, things that a year ago we had no idea what to expect of all that. So these are things that just make me very proud and happy with this budget that we're putting forward. And I'm all the more proud that it is a budget that really reflects the priorities of our residents, which came out of that recent resident engagement survey, which actually came a bit kind of after the budget was developed. But to see that those priorities line up perfectly is a wonderful thing. So just to say, I'm fully supportive of this budget, and it's exactly the budget that we need going into this next year. And with the proclamations, I just really wanted to thank Community Affairs Director Cindy Stewart for CO1, the proclamation for recognizing Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I know I'd reached out to Cindy again over a year ago. I was talking to residents, and this was during my campaign. I was on the phone with a gentleman. His background, he's Chinese American, and he noticed that we didn't put forward this proclamation last year. And I know I wanted to do everything that I could to make sure that we didn't skip this year, because residents notice. So to him, to honor him and to honor our very diverse Asian American Pacific Islander residents here in Troy, I'm really proud that we have that proclamation. And also just want to call out our police, recognizing this is Police Memorial Week, and just remembering those who've lost their lives on the front lines for our city, and all those who daily put their lives to the test and on the line for our city, because we wouldn't have our beautiful, all that we have with our parks, all that we have with our quality of life, with our infrastructure and with our business environment, if we didn't have that safety and security that our police provide. So I just want to thank them as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga. Additional council comments? All right, two quick ones from me. Tomorrow, if you're so inclined, we are doing a ribbon cutting outside at the Sylvan Glen Lake Park, phase 2 of the Troy Trails. I looked at the weather earlier. I think it's going to be, relatively cold, but if you walk a little bit on the trail, you'll warm up. But we'll be there doing a ribbon cutting to celebrate the work we're doing on those Troy Trails, and you are certainly, anyone in the public is welcome to be there as well. It's outside, and we'd love to see you out there. That's the first thing. Second thing is, next week I will be doing, actually, it's a very exciting, if you're into states of city and county government, we've got a back-to-back double header next week, just found out today. I'm doing the State of the City at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, May 19th. It'll be streaming on our YouTube channel or on the cable channels as well. And you can watch it later, of course, if you're so inclined. And then working with the chamber on that, and really looking forward to that. A lot of it will discuss the budget we approved tonight and some other thoughts on things. And then I just found out today, like I said, County Executive David Coulter is streaming his State of the County at 7 o'clock that same evening. So you can spend a couple hours next Wednesday evening learning about your city and your county. Would love to hear your feedback and to have you be part of that as well. That said, we've got no closed session this evening. I think this might be our last virtual meeting as a council. I said that a month ago or a month and a half ago, and I was wrong, but I even posted on it. I'm not going to do that this time, once bitten, twice shy. But thank you, city staff, for facilitating all of this you've done with us. I know we've switched formats a couple times and processes, and here we're back and forth, but I know Planning Commission meets tomorrow night. That will still be the virtual format, and any other boards and committees in the next 2 weeks will still stay fully virtual. But I think that's going to be it for us, just when we're all getting really comfortable with it. But keep our healthcare heroes in your thoughts and prayers and minds, and our first and frontline responders. They've been working in person this whole time, working hard to keep us safe and for our good, and we can never repay that debt. So thank you to all of you, and be safe, everybody. Appreciate it, and have a good night. This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.